welcome Jeff.
Woo!
He's reading chapter 7 of his comic book, by the way.
So I don't know how many of you, Kate, are you ready?
Yeah, ready to go, sweetie.
Okay, so I don't know how many of you know about this comic book I've been reading about the 10 plagues in ancient Egypt. So, could you raise your hand if you do know about it? All right, so just a few, I'll give you a quick synopsis. In the first plague, the river Nile turns red with a fungus, so it turns to blood because people are dumping in the river their wastes, and because of an altercation between the overseers and the janitors, as it were, they all dumped the shit in the same place. And the last words of the first plague is like, Korah comes to me, he's one of the overseers, and the last pun is holy shit, which is holy with a W-H-O-L-Y, but next plague is the fish die in the river, and you're introduced to Aaron. Aaron is Moses' supposed brother, but he's not really. It's just that Aaron's mother suckled Moses as a baby, as a wet nurse. Aaron is a busker who sings for the fishermen and plays the harp, and in the end he discovers that he is too white for the society, and he dreams of being an Al Jolson and being black-faced. And that's the end of the second one. The third one I'm going to try to be as fast as I can because this is a long story, number 7. The next one, we meet the Pharaoh and his court, and there is an issue with the Canaanites. They have created a porous border to the north, and like Donald Trump, thieves and prostitutes and people who are mental cases are pouring into Egypt from the north, and the Pharaoh reprimands the ambassador from Canaan, and we discover that there are frogs everywhere on the top of the pyramids themselves from the heights of the Pharaoh's own persona. The fourth one is people get head lice. A character who you meet in Iraq who is prominent in this story is a very enterprising young man from Ethiopia, and his Nubian qualities make him stand out in the story, and he is making a business out of making fried frog legs, and what happens but head lice appears, and that's the fourth plague. The fifth plague is we have the royal court and the Pharaoh's wives, his daughters, the whole family is dealing with buying wigs from Mrs. Shedel, and that's a Hebrew word or a Yiddish word for wigs, and one of the friends of the royal family is hot to get Moses, this young man Moses, into a relationship. Moses' mother would love to see him settle down and marry off, but it doesn't work out. She wants to come and buy a harp from the likes of me, a character named Empty Jeff, and Empty Jeff has a store very much like this where he makes musical instruments, and harps are his specialty. And his brother Aaron is, of course, a harp player, and Moses imagines that perhaps if he plays the harp, he will stop stuttering and have a future as a musician. We discovered that there are now flies everywhere in the royal palace, and the young lady who wants to buy Moses a birthday present is still, as a young lady, she had an affair with Aaron, and she is still somewhat attached to that affair. And her failure to win Moses over is the end of the fifth plague. The sixth plague, the animals are dying, and Korach, a man who is not here today, who is actually a study of that character, is always a victim of some problem or another. And Korach, though has this magnificent power of healing, Moses brings him back to the palace, and the Pharaoh's favorite pet, which is a golden calf, is dying, and Korach feeds him beer, and he saves his life. And the Pharaoh says, "You will be rewarded with this beyond your wildest dreams for saving him." But Korach goes to a bar. He runs into the ambassador from Canaan. He drinks too much beer, and he opens his mouth about how the Pharaoh is sort of presenting his calf as if it would be a gift of dinner for high noblemen and ambassadors, but he really just brings the calf after he parades them back to the kitchen and frees them, and then just serves meat of some arbitrary animal. So Korach, once he realized that, he opens his mouth too much and he runs away, and we don't see him again until chapter 8. But we're talking about chapter 7 now. So we've come to the beginning of chapter 7, of which I need glasses to read. And it starts off, Moses has finally gotten his harp. Instead of somebody buying it for it, he comes to me and I sell it to him, and he is at his harp lesson in the palace with Aaron. And Aaron says right from the beginning, "Strings prudently divided, gently touched, when plucked, produce a clear pitch, distinctly different from their fundamental." And this is called harmonics. Meantime, in the back, there is this young 14-year-old girl watching the lesson from hidden behind some pillars. And she is watching, and Aaron is saying to him, the halfway point clearly creates what we call the octave when gently touched. Because it vibrates twice as fast, but when you touch the string at a third of the string, it creates a harmonic which is magical and different from just the octave. And this is how we create music. And he's showing Moses the thing, and he says to Moses, some things come naturally and some need practice, but it's the empty mind that receives the music. And Moses says, I hear you. And Aaron says, but there are also things we can't empty ourselves of. And Aaron says, and I hear you, to Moses. Moses says, my life is endless distraction. I thought playing the harp I could find me. And Aaron says, yes, the seats of power bear a great weight. And on those who they bear, music is to relieve this stress. And Moses says, no, I am my father's son. And Aaron says, my father made sandals for the privileged until bitter times devoured the people. Desperation to certain madness, hates consumed inside and reflect alive. And there is a picture of the people burning the village, burning the buildings. And it says, it reflects alive the terminally deprived. It's kind of a poetic line. Bitter times devour the people, desperation to certain madness, hates consume inside, reflect alive, the terminally deprived. And Aaron says, my father, with many craftsmen and merchants, sought the Pharaoh's grace during these days of rioting and chaos, and a new future behind the walls of the Pharaoh's new palace. And surreptitiously they paid to see the deed be done. And as predator and prey changed places, they burned down their own businesses. Just on a personal note, my father owned a shoe store in Newark, New Jersey. And it was in an Italian neighborhood, and when the blacks started moving into the neighborhood, the businessmen burned down their buildings, got insurance money, and moved to the suburbs. Now, my father in an Italian neighborhood was not Italian, he was Jewish, and so he did reciprocally. They all told him to do it. He burned down his business, and the insurance company said, you're not Italian, we're not going to give you the money. So his life didn't go so well after that. So this is somewhat autobiographical. As predator and prey changed places, the city burned. Now, Aaron says, I've come to understand your father's outrage, telling Moses, speaking of the Pharaoh, as keeper, ordained, divine, judge supreme, the law, the order, civilization itself, he couldn't but call those responsible to task. My father, disgraced and ruined, was left to his reward, which was alone and idle. He festered in self-remorse, and then welts and boils infected his legs. Eventually, surgeons were forced to cut them off. So he walked around and he stumbled through the rest of his life. This is a true story, too, about my father. He crafted sandals for the poorest children outside the wall. Playing with them kept him alive, notwithstanding the meager payment they could afford. So my father actually got a job working in a department store for black kids in downtown Newark and black families, and he ran the child shoe department. And I think really that's what kept him alive, was putting shoes on little black kids. And it's funny, the irony that he had burnt down his store to escape the blacks. It was my mother, as you remember, who taught Empty Jeff and myself the songs of my people and how to play. He's a much better musician, but prefers the life of service in his shop to rescind our father's error. My mother's father was a famous storyteller and player among my people, but we never got to know him. As is often the case, he died young, leaving mother at 14 years old until she married my father. Anyway, Your Highness, I assure you, you will be able to master the harp. Meantime, in the background, as Moses and Aaron start walking to leave the lesson, little Isis, Moses' little sister at 14 years old, says to herself, dare I? And she goes over to the harp and she says, it's not difficult at all to hold. She lifts the harp up and she plucks the strings. And as Aaron and Moses enter the hallway, Aaron turns to Moses and Moses says, I think not, Aaron. Playing the harp is really not for me. Perhaps someday I'll find myself and I'll write a scroll or something like that. May I humbly suggest, says Aaron to you, sire, that I come and teach your little sister. It's obviously she has genuine interest. Moses nods approvingly. That's the end of that scene, but we're still in the same story. So now Narat, this enterprising Ethiopian, is at my shop and he's saying, I'm just saying, of all my schemes, this is it. Never has a need cried out so clearly, a need that needs to be fulfilled. Discarded metal plates are the trick, polished to a mirrored shine, just what the patients ordered. Now, people are now getting plagued with boils and welts on their body. He says, I gotta run, got a crew to hire, got so much to do in so little time. I'm running to keep the wheel spinning, just getting in shape. Meantime, Aaron is now going to the palace to give little Isis her first lesson. And he's walking down the streets and people are all over the place with boils, and this woman comes up to him and says, look at me, my hide, I burn, woe is me, how I suffer. Why is it that you go untainted? Aaron just walks on in silence. At last he reaches the palace and he says, at least some sanity in the palace. Everyone is now having masks on and hoods over their heads. People are masking up against this plague. And Aaron enters into the palace and up to the chamber, and the attendant says, the princess is expecting you. She's been practicing for days in anticipation of you coming. Aaron says, really? And as he enters the room, little Isis starts playing, and she starts singing. As the mother receives the child, now this is a song, and I can sing it and play a harp or a guitar with it, but we want to keep this just a poetry. It's the story. And anyway, I can't sing like a little 14-year-old girl. So she says, as the mother receives the child, in the seas, the rivers wild, the gods conjure and the gods beguile. Trouble in the Nile. As the sun begets the seasons and the moon receives its reasons, tethered together in this life-death trial, troubles in denial. Schemes and dreams, a crafted boat, oared, assured, as prayers afloat. Hoping, coping, groping, await to glean, troubles attend unforeseen. As the daughter and as somebody's son tend together this life and fuck on, once was becomes undone, troubles in the Nile. Righteous accusers serve together, one together, conceive together in this great unknown. Once was becomes undone, troubles trouble everyone. Once was troubles everyone. Yes, says Aaron. Wow, I'm quite surprised how well you have taken to playing and singing at the same time. But try spreading your fingers apart a little wider. In wider intervals you get the notes. You understand the mode, but you need to show the connection between the notes and the strings and your voice. And that's the end of the lesson. And he says, I will return in a week. Meantime, I go to visit Narat in his new enterprising business, and there is a line formed outside. Everybody wants to buy a mirror to look at their own warts and plagues. And I arrive and treated like a special person. Narat says to me, Empty Jeff, I made this one especially for you. You know, it's funny, the more people reflect on their own imperfections, the more I feel free, but there is always some lingering guilt that I have. And I leave the shop on that one. The next week, Aaron arrives for his lesson again, and he says to little Isis, have you been practicing the exercises from the last lesson, little Isis? And she says, yes, I have. That's all I've been doing is exercises. But to keep my sanity, I have written a new song, and I'm still working on it. Can I play it for you? Sure. And this is the song she sings. She sings, I don't sleep at night, and I can hardly eat a bite. Bare above the ones I've loved, it's easy to see clearly things are not right. Left feeling bad and shadow-clad, abhorrent cries, too soon for goodbyes. I account for all the friends I've had. It makes me crazy. Leave to time, relive, remind, by the letter, cures the better. It seems to me the blind are leading the blind. Awake or dream, past, present, in between, give the reason, write the rhyme. Who is left? And what is left behind? It makes me crazy, awake, asleep crazy. I call out to you, locked up inside, faced with feelings I can't hide. I'm conditioned to tend these failings I abide. No one alone the mantras drone, yet I await that which I have sown, masked between this granted life on loan. It makes me crazy, awake, asleep crazy, all day long crazy, this crazy bad news of mine. Perhaps I'll send a crooked smile and reach another in exile. Astride these hopes I must postpone. Surely again we'll find relief, conceived in joy and confirmed in grief, certain of these lessons we have learned. They've made us crazy, everybody crazy, all day long crazy, crazy bad news of mine. Things gone wrong crazy, battered, beaten crazy, crazy bad news unkind, crazy bad news defined, bad news of mine. Wow, says Aaron. My little goddess, what a magnificent song. Besides the invention and the excellence of your playing, I was truly inspired. Look at you, your talent. You're a star waiting to explode, the voice of your people. We need to expose you to the world. Egypt needs to see the glory of you. She thinks in her mind of herself just standing naked in front of the world. Meantime, back at my shop, I am thinking, how easy once concerted resonates free the voice of your soul. I'm just talking to myself in my heart. And who appears but Narat? And he says, Empty Jeff, I've become captive of my own greed, and now look at me. How I exploited the troubled and used their failings for my gain. My vanity unseated, I come to you. I need your help. I am plagued. And he has boils all over him. And I say, once was becomes undone. Look at it on the bright side, I tell Narat. See how you've changed. This rough terrain we master moves us by leaps and bounds. Unsettled times begot my life. What a surprise it was when my father came home to a pregnant wife he couldn't account for. This is a true story. In my life, in World War II, my father was away, and he came home, and my mother was pregnant. So she had an abortion with me, and it didn't work. Some things that are covered up just elicit quite a response. Anyway, relax, I say to Narat, my beautiful friend. You go see my wife, Candace. She will apply an ointment to help you heal. Meantime, little Isis now has Aaron as a promoter, and she's become a star. She's top-notch billing in Egypt. And she's singing a song, streets, walks alone, courage to dare the tide, just to glimpse, perhaps to chance, masked passions worn wide. Touching someone, searching, the birds willing to confide. The bees drone, not one alone, as we're shown, the gods do provide. As the trees respond in unison, as heaven seeds the sky, nature's longing admiration is carried on wings revived. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, distance spans the great divide. Undone ties and dreams revise, and it serves for me, my pride abides. Speak waiting inspirations, replacing aberrant dissatisfactions. Our conditions yet determined, face to choose, nowhere to hide. Here today, gone tomorrow, our confronted situation, undetermined contradictions, reassure that I will arise. Once happens, and then forever. Moments dormant, not forgotten, lights the road and engines endeavors, asks who's there as I recite. I will sow and harvest wisdom as I stumble on my doorstep. Ever searching, flaws forgiven, will to will in free delight. Be it not for salvation, strength forged in contradictions. Sentence me my convictions as I serve this key of life. Bumped into you, it hurt so bad, boiled over, callously clad, bumped into you, hurt so bad. Streets long in courage, bear to revive, freely certain, birds tone, bees drone, not one alone, God on all sides. And the audience breaks into great applause, and she is the star that Aaron thought she was. And as I thought, they love her, how she connects, understands their contradictions, rejoices in their contribution and their contrition. And then she comes backstage and he says, my little darling, you have no idea, our fortune knows no bounds. I've already booked a year of engagements. They've even offered to pay up front. And he touches her in affection, and she says, no, the more I lose touch, I am the great fame is the great embezzler. And it arms me, and I feel the loss. This is not my ambition. And he goes, no, it's only natural when you have to face fame. You'll come to see. And he says, she slaps him and says, don't touch me. I've come to see that I am infected by this. And she has boils all over her arms. And then she says, forgive me, I am still a child, yet I am plagued by the boils, like the aged. I need time to heal, to sort things out for myself. And he says, relax, my beautiful child, you go see my brother's wife, Candace. She makes an ointment that will help you heal. And then we can talk. And she says, okay. And off she goes to find my wife, Candace. And I notice her going down the street, and I say to myself, at last she finds her path. And she gets to my wife's house, and there is a line a block long. And she's, oh my. And who should arrive at the same time but Narat? And he goes, oh no, this is horrible. I'll be in line for hours. And my wife Candace comes outside, and she goes, "Well, what do we have today?" "Oh my goodness, how can I care for all of you?" And Narat is online now, and who is standing next to him but little Isis, and he goes, what you looking at?" And Candace looks over and sees the crowd, and she recognizes Narat because he is my good friend. And she goes, "Narat, you too? Great. Well, bring your little friend and come with me. We'll get right back and we'll try to see if we can set things right." And she takes them into the house and she says to them, so how long have you two been together and boiled in this together?" And Narat says, "We don't know each other from Adam." And little Isis says, "We were just next to each other in line." "Well, you just do what I say." And she hands a barrel of turmeric to little Isis and a bunch of cups. And she says, "You each carry out a drum of salve and I will bring the cups." She goes outside. The line is still there. And, "Okay, listen up now, people. If you all follow my directions, we'll be able to take care of all of us straight with." Little Isis here will hand you all a cup, and then Narat will scoop some salve into each cup. But first, we need to form a double line. So the last person in line goes stand next to the first person in line, and so on down the lines until there is a perfect loop of people. And she says, "Okay, now that we're in groups of two, we are ready." And she takes off all her clothes, and she says, "As you all can see now that I have disrobed and removed all my bandages, I have no boils. I too was troubled in these times. Plague overtook my body, yet with diligence, fortitude, and wisdom of my teachers, turmeric, an ancient rare herb, when applied regularly, it will cure all of you." And she says to the crowd, "Come on, people, let's see what you've got." And everybody takes off their clothes. Narat and little Isis look at each other kind of embarrassed, but they do it. And they take off their clothes and they're all standing there in this picture of nudity. I don't know if any of you can see it from where you are, but there's the whole crowd naked. And she says, "Now that I've paired you in groups of two, you can help each other temporarily. Your partner and you should apply the salves on those hard-to-get places on your bodies." And she says, "How beautiful each one of you are. And so as we exit, we earn creation's admiration." And the rubbing goes on. There is little conversations between the crowd, and finally Candace raises her hands to the heavens and says, "Thank you, Lord of the universe, whose eternal light shines in all of us, in whose body pure and clear is carried our souls." We're getting near the end. "You're more than a great help," Candace says, "little darling. May I say, in my opinion, you couldn't have made a better friend than Narat here." And she slaps Narat a little bit. "And you perhaps a sign of the times, oh, just forget it." And they leave. And little Isis and Narat walk away, and Narat says, "Before you go, you want to get something to eat?" And she says, "Why not? Sure." It's amazing how much food we have, and still people go hungry. And Narat says, "It's the farmer that's the one that feeds them all." let's take our food and go down by the Nile. She says, great idea. And they go sit down by the river. And she says to him, you know, the river's the mother that feeds us all. And he goes, yeah, though there's those crowded out at the nipple. And she goes, that's a funny one. And he says, you know, my life after this lesson is seeking a meaningful way to serve this river of humanity. And she says, you know, as I was taught, my life would be nothing short of the finest of my ancestors, the daughter of the pharaohs. And Nerat says, what could be of more service than feed the people? Ra goes away to inspire dreams of a better tomorrow. And she says, oh, or maybe to cool the passions of today's ambitions. And he says, well, I've sentenced my ambitions to be but a rung on my ascent to truth. You know Empty Jeff? And she says, you know the harp maker? And yeah, Empty Jeff is my best and dearest friend. I made a lot of money from vanity and mirrors, and he's right. I got to buy a farm. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a farm and lend my hand to Mother Earth and Mother River's work. And she says, you know, I as well have made my own money from songs given to me as a gift, given for a higher purpose, I'm sure. And he says, as he grabs her hand, he says, farmers, you too? And she says, farmers it is to be, partner. And he says, farmers it is. And so chapter 7 ends. Thank you.